Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Learn with Jason. Today on the show, we bring back Nader Dabit. Nader, how you doing, man?
Pretty good, pretty good. How's it going? Thanks for
It's,
having me.
yeah, it's great to have you back on the show. This is what your third tour, right? Like we've done a lot of these.
Yeah, this is our second or third. I'm sorry, I was distracted by that little thing that was coming on the screen. That's pretty sweet.
Yes, thank you for the subscription
You
line.
have your Twitch stream tricked out pretty good at this point, I'm assuming.
Yeah, it might be a little different from the last time you were on.
Yeah, you've come a long way, for
Oh,
sure.
you can see my troubleshooting here. I was having driver problems. Like the stream wouldn't start up, and it was just telling me like your drivers are out of date. So I had to replace the drivers really quick. So, anyways, that's why we're late starting today. Now, for those of us who are not familiar with your work, do you want to give us a little bit of a background and all those good things?
Yeah, so I've been a software developer for about 9 years now. Um, I was doing like React Native and React training for a couple of years before joining AWS in 2018 as a developer advocate, but I also do a lot of other stuff, contributing to open source and all kinds of stuff, whatever I can do to kind of help, on the team and stuff like that. And then I guess before that, I was kind of focusing on, cross-platform mobile development with Ionic and just an all-around front-end developer, I guess.
Nice. Yeah. And so one of the things that you've been working on that is super cool is you've been doing a lot of work in the JAMstack. And I've been seeing you do a lot of work with something that you're calling the JAMstack CMS, which is super exciting. And recently you launched something for e-commerce, right?
Yeah, so JAMstack Ecommerce is kind of like the newest addition to that repo.
And
So Jamstack e-commerce, it's kind of like it's kind of really it kind of falls into that category of starter projects. So if you look at some of the stuff that's already out there, I'm actually writing a blog post for Y Combinator for the startup school blog over there. And one of the things that they wanted is kind of an end-to-end solution of building a full stack serverless application. And we
okay.
thought that an e-commerce site would be like a good a demo. So I went to
Hmm.
look for a demo project, built with Gatsby, because that's kind of what I understand. There's other stuff out there. I think, believe it or not, there's actually more stuff out there in the e-commerce space for Vue, for whatever
Hmm.
reason. So like Vue storefront is a pretty solid thing that's out there. But for Gatsby, I didn't see it like a ton of really polished examples of e-commerce starters. So I was like, okay, I'll just build the back end, but also I'll build the front end and then open source it.
Cool. Yeah. Um, so one question that I have, do you do your own design?
I typically, yeah, I do my own design, but I typically copy and kind of modify designs that I already like to an extent.
Okay. Yeah. I
So
just,
like
because
this is like
these are
yeah.
just cool.
As far as that stuff, yeah, I design all the logos and stuff. Yeah, as far as the website design, I typically find like a really nice design and either copy it and credit them, or merge a couple of designs together
Yeah.
and kind of just copy elements from each one. And that's
Yeah.
kind of what I did with the e-commerce site.
Yeah, it looks really good. So it's good work. Um, so yeah, I think this is what we're trying to do today is we're trying to get one of these put together. And I thought it would be fun to show the flexibility of it if we get this up and deployed on Netlify. So what is it going to take for us to do that?
Cool. Yeah. So there's two things that we could probably do, and I'm not sure how much time we have. What do we have? About 45 more minutes.
Well, we can theoretically go for about an hour 15. But
Okay.
I know that it's late for you. You're calling in from Amsterdam. You're at is it View Comp or which?
Yeah, it's View Amsterdam and Front End Love. It's like this 3 day thing where one day is general JavaScript front end stuff, and then 2 days of Vue.
I'm very like I see those giant stages because it's in that venue space. If you get a chance, actually, let's find a picture of this. Did you post a tweet with a picture of this stage?
Yeah. So if you go back, yeah, okay, yeah, you'll see one somewhere down there. I tweet a lot, so
Here, check
yeah,
this
there's
out.
one.
Look at this. It's so over the top, and it's like it like wraps all the way around too. Like it's twice that long, isn't it?
Yeah, this is like 1/3 of the screen that we're
Oh my
looking
God.
at, and maybe not even 1/3.
It is so cool. Like
I think I retweeted someone else. I don't know, but
yeah,
yeah,
anyways, it's go check this out because it is unbelievable. Like it's really cool. It's a really cool venue. I'm speaking at the React Summit, and selfishly, I really hope that that is going to be in the same venue so that I can get a picture of myself in front of these giant screens because it feels very like
yeah.
rock starry, right? To give a presentation on a
It's
screen that
badass.
big.
I have one from View Amsterdam last year, and I think React Summit is there, so I'll probably see you there.
Awesome. Yeah. Oh, you're going?
Yeah, I'm going.
Good. Yeah, I've been doing a lot less travel lately, so we haven't crossed paths as much. We used to see each other all the time because for those of you
Yeah, I
who
think
aren't aware,
India was the
Nader is
last
like
time.
he's like the hardest working dev in front end right now. Like we were in React India and he got up on stage, gave this killer demo and talk, and then got off stage and like pushed a bunch of deploys to JAMstack CMS, and at some point managed to do his day job too. So
Well, thank you.
um,
That means a lot coming from you because I really, truly, I feel the same way about you and a lot of the people that you kind of work with over there in Netlify. You all are some of the hardest working people, also, and also some of the kindest. And I think everyone in the industry agrees with that.
oh, stop it. No, that's I agree. That's why I ended up here is
Yeah.
because I could not be happier with this team. Um, okay, so I'll stop gushing. Let's do some code. So we've got this Jamstack e-commerce setup. We've got yeah, you said there are a couple ways we can go. We've got probably about an hour of good dev time. So I'll let you decide what the most appropriate way to move here is.
So there's two pieces to this. First of all, we'll probably just go ahead and deploy the whole thing and just kind of like let it live as it is, and we'll look at it and we'll play around with it. And then if we have time, we might be able to even add some inventory that is dynamic because right now the inventory is actually kind of hard coded. But the way that I created this project is the inventory is kind of given to the system at build time, in that Gatsby build cycle. You have like those hooks that you can kind of hook into to do things like build pages and stuff. So
Okay.
right now, you can actually just kind of go in and just flip out the inventory provider because it's an asynchronous function. And right
Mm.
now, it's just an async function returning an array of data. But what you theoretically would probably do in real life, you would probably kind of switch that out into some type of API call, either to Shopify or to Netlify or to whatever your backend service provider is, whatever that would be.
So
And that would just pull the inventory and then it would build.
so that's actually really interesting. So this isn't backed by a particular e-commerce service. Like it's not
No,
tied
it's
to
completely
Stripe
like
or
agnostic.
Shopify. That's super
Okay,
cool.
well, so I kind of built in Stripe as the checkout provider,
Okay.
and there's a little bit more, of course, that goes into the actual checkout process because typically with e-commerce, you want to validate the amount on the server because you don't want to trust that the user is sending the correct amount from the
Right.
client because they could hijack that. So typically, the way that people do that, a couple of different ways, from what I understand. You might send an array of SKUs into a backend function or a service. So functions as a service works really great for this. In the checkout process where you are going to actually process the payment, you might send the total amount along with a bunch of SKUs. And then what is this?
So whenever somebody puts, so the chat has corgi emotes. People who subscribe to me and people who subscribe to Chris Biscardi get party corgi
Yeah.
emotes, and we count those. And whenever it crosses the threshold, it releases a corgi stampede.
Oh, nice. So I just witnessed like history. Anyway, so where were we? I
I know.
forgot actually.
That's the. So I, I feel like I need a pause button on the stampede so that it doesn't break right in the middle of us like trying to figure out what we're gonna do. So we were
No,
talking
that
about
was- that was-
validating SKUs in the back end, validating prices.
That was like the highlight of the show, I think, already. It's all downhill from here. Yeah, so yeah, you just take those SKUs, and what you might do is like you then maybe will query your inventory provider with those SKU numbers, and you might calculate the total again. and then just kind of make sure that the total is equal to the total that the user sent.
Got it.
You could also just have IDs on the items and do the same thing, so they don't have to actually be SKUs if you're just using some backend like API, whatever, maybe a simple database.
Yeah. Nice. That's super cool. And so like something like Shopify is going to validate that for us already. So if we roll our own thing, that's something that we want to be mindful of. If we're using Stripe, I think Stripe Checkout will do this for us. Shopify will do this for us. Other like BigCommerce and other like headless e-commerce platforms would do all of
That's
that
right.
backend validation on our behalves, which is that's one of the reasons that it's a nice solution on the JAMstack to use like an actual SaaS platform for e-commerce, is that they're going to solve all these problems. So anyways, yeah, I think that this, I'm super excited. So I want to see this thing in motion. Let's make it happen. I've got a terminal
So
open.
go ahead and clone it, and we'll go from there.
All right, so I'm cloning. I think this. Look at this. I learned that the hub, you don't have to type in the Git thing. You can just put in the name of a. Now watch, it's not going to work because I said it. Yeah, check that
I
out.
learned something new today.
Hub tools, they're so good. All right, so I've got this. Let me open it in a editor, and then we can let's see. Close that. Okay.
Cool.
So yarn install and
Yeah.
okay. Let's poke around a little bit. Oh, interesting. Interesting. Are you running this on Dino?
I'm actually using Node, but you can actually do you could do modules, ES modules, by just using this ESM package. And then if you go into Gatsby Node, all we're doing is like importing um, the ESM, and then we're exporting the
Whoa.
ESM.js. So that way you can kind of just write imports, and it solves a lot of the problems that I used to run into
Holy crap.
with, you know what I mean?
That yeah. So originally, before I saw that Nader had dropped this Jamstack e-commerce, we were going to do an episode on Dino because for those of you who aren't familiar, Dino is it's not a fork of Node. It's just kind of like another way of doing similar things, but with a focus on like ES modules and security and stuff. I haven't done anything with it, but I read through kind of the philosophy, and it sounds really cool.
Yeah, it sounds like the all of the things, the problems that people say that Node has, you know, along with all the good things that Node has, is kind of what Dino is supposed to be. I think it's very immature at this point. You know, you can use it,
Sure.
you could probably build like certain things with it, but it's not going to be as sophisticated as far as all of the features that Node has. But it does look sweet, and I think it's like written in TypeScript by default.
Oh
You
yeah,
can
in
like
the
write TypeScript by default.
Benjamin in the chat is saying it's a native TypeScript runtime on top of V8. That's cool.
Okay, wow, that's helpful.
That is cool. What I really like about it is there's like the module support by default is a big deal to me because like Node, it feels like when JavaScript and Node, like browser JavaScript and Node diverged originally, there were a lot of good reasons for that. And then as the module systems have moved closer and closer together, it's been like, how do we fit these universes together? And Dino seems like maybe a little bit extreme to be like, throw the whole ecosystem away, we'll try again. But it is kind of it's really interesting to see what happens if we build like a JavaScript backend runtime with modern JavaScript capabilities as like the starting point, which is kind of it's cool to see.
Yeah, I mean, it's innovative, and I believe the person that created Node is actually the one that's creating Dino. Is that right?
I see that claim in the chat, but I don't know for sure.
Cool. So what we've done now is you've installed it and you've run Gatsby develop, which is going to basically build out everything. And then now we're just kind of clicking around.
Nice, nice. And is this
Yeah, so
through
that
like Stripe
shopping cart
checkout?
form, yeah, that's Stripe. I would like to, like one of the pull requests I'm going to be sending in the next couple of days is going to make this form a little nicer, because right now you actually have to like type out your information, and it's also like coded to be local. But there's this package that you can use that kind of allows you to like have it international, and based on the country the person's in, then you get different options below that. So it's pretty cool. But yeah,
Nice.
for now this is kind of but this works. You know, if you did want to use it as is, it's just probably not the best UX, I guess you would expect. But
Yeah. So if I fill this out right now, who am I sending money to?
you're not sending any money to anybody. There is basically a function that's going to process this on the client, and it's just going to send a fake response back. And
Okay,
what
so
you, yeah, what you would probably do for this app is I actually included a function that you can use on the server to actually validate, and process the payment.
what's the
But
one that
because this
doesn't
is open
fail?
source, we kind of want to make it, just completely agnostic.
Yeah.
Do we have to draw the rest of the owl? No, I actually wrote the code, yeah, to process that stuff. It's just it's in this project in a separate function, because this is kind of I wanted to make this agnostic as possible, and I did not want to be like tied to any certain solution. So this is kind of the response you would get if the payment went through and all that. So
Yeah.
a couple of things about what's going on here is so you see that like as he's navigating, you have like the slash, the name of the category. So you have like slash whatever you clicked on the nav, and then you have the nav items, and you might wonder like how do those nav items get there? Are those hard coded? The way that this works is actually there is a schema type of design that the system expects, and it's basically a product type. So if we go to providers, and yeah, we'll look at Node that file in just a moment. If you look at the inventory provider,
Inventory provider.
which actually imports that inventory, you'll see this type that's a type product, and this is just kind of the object you could say is that the system is expecting, which is a very generic type of product if you think about it. An ID, an array of categories, a price, a name, an image, a description, and a few other fields there. So if you pull data from another backend, you might kind of map over it and try to make it either adhere to this schema, or you might change a few things within the project itself to make it fit to the schema that you've kind of designed or that comes back. But
Nice.
what we do is we take the categories array, and in the build step, we kind of create a unique list of all of these categories, and then we build the pages and the navigation based on those categories. So if you have a dynamic category list that changes every time the build happens, it will create a different navigation.
Got it. Okay, so this is our inventory provider. This inventory here is the this is your hard coded like demo data. But if I wanted to create one that
Yes.
was like Shopify, I could, make a request. Let's see, request products from Shopify.
And you could probably even do this, write this code. Well, depending on how big this request would be, it probably wouldn't be that big. You might be able to put it directly in the inventory provider, because if you look at how that function resolves the inventory, it's just a promise
Right.
that's faked right now.
Yeah.
So
Now, what I see as being really cool about this, because of the way that you've abstracted this, theoretically speaking, I could have multiple e-commerce providers here. Now that would get hairy because the checkout would get weird. But like,
yeah, but that would be possible. Yeah.
yeah, because all we're doing is we're taking like generic products and putting them into our store. So we could pull from like, if we were selling stickers just using Stripe, and then we had like, clothing in Shopify, so that we had like the variant management and stuff. Like you could theoretically do all of that, and it would take some doing to make that work with the checkout. But like it would in theory just work.
Yeah, the way it's set up, you could definitely do that.
That is very cool. Um, awesome. Yeah. So under the hood, it looks like
Yeah,
you're doing
let's walk
some.
through some of this.
Let's see. What order should we do? I feel like top down doesn't always make the most sense.
So there's two like of the hooks that I'm kind of subscribing to. One is create pages and one is source notes.
Okay.
Um, and you being from Gatsby might be able to explain this a little better, but create pages will basically create actual, pages and at build time or whenever you're developing will like place them in your public folder. Is that or somewhere? And then,
Yeah.
they'll be a part of your app. So I'm not sure. I think it's public.
So
Anyway,
these
so
the built pages will get stuck out here once you run Gatsby build at whatever path you set here.
okay, got it. So what we're doing here is first of all we create a path called all that I don't even think we're using, but it creates a page for like to see all of the inventory in the entire in the entire app. But most importantly, we're doing this inventory by category where we kind of like create it looks like an object with all of the different categories separated by category. So we go through the inventory. We call this method, and we kind of map over it in a reduce function, and we place the items in their own category, like a different data structure, I guess you could say. So you could think of it as like I have all the couches, I have all of the dressers, I have all the beds, and then within that object, you have an array with those items, and that allows us to kind of then create pages for each category.
Yeah. So there's a question in the chat from Phil Hawksworth, who you may know. He says, now that you've explored all this plumbing, how much do you think this approach could eat the lunch of massive e-com products like Hybris? I've seen that used at great expense for companies with fewer than 100 SKUs, since it was best of breed, in quotes.
I mean, I think they're like, the fact that some of these companies have been doing this for 10, 20 years, they have a certain level of, feature parity that's almost impossible, I think, to match. And I think that would be the first challenge of something like this. But I think you could beat them on performance. I think that's the number one. The performance in SEO, is kind of, I think, the big win with something like this, because if you look at WordPress sites, WordPress is still super popular, but the experience is just terrible compared to a Gatsby site, right? So I think like you see a lot of people doing e-commerce on Shopify and WordPress. I think the speed alone of what Gatsby or any static site generator is going to bring kind of gives you that huge step up. And then all these other problems you can solve. And, those problems might be tough because you have all these features that you don't have yet. But I think down the road, I think this is going to be the experience that people are going to be wanting, in my opinion, especially once we start getting these incremental builds and stuff going with Gatsby, right? I mean, I think that's one of the big problems, because if you get a huge site with 200,000 or 100,000, 50,000, whatever products, that build is just too big, to handle. In my opinion, I don't know.
Yeah, I think there are so many different ways that we're gonna have to solve these problems, and incremental builds there's an hour's worth of discussion just on how to make that like feasible. But it's I think there are some really really cool things that are coming down the line from Gatsby. There's some stuff that we're kicking around at Netlify. There's some stuff that I've seen out in the community to really do like make the JAMstack viable at scale, like and at massive scale, like Wikipedia scale. And I think that's really really exciting to know that people are working on kind of approaching those problems and making it something that it does become without introducing the complexity. Because like the reason that you can run sites like Wikipedia at scale now is because people have done a tremendous amount of architecture work to set up these like backends and caching layers and auto scalers and all this kind of global distribution stuff that's really, really, really hard to get right. Um, and so what I think is interesting about the Jamstack is the fact that it takes a similar approach and makes it completely approachable to a single dev, as opposed to requiring a full team. Um, Obviously, that you start to hit the limits when you get into the thousands and thousands of pages, but like I find it really, really exciting that the thousands and thousands is starting to become the tens of thousands, and hopefully it'll become the hundreds of thousands, and then the millions, and then that boundary disappears. So I'm really looking forward to kind of what's coming down the line here.
Oh yeah, yeah, totally. And when that problem is cracked or solved, that's going to be huge. Or that's
Yeah.
going to open up just a whole like massive market of enterprise level and just large scale use cases that are going to be amazing experiences actually for everybody.
Yeah. Yeah. And Phil in the chat makes a good point that like lots of shopping sites don't have that many SKUs. But
Oh
it's
yeah,
it's
yeah,
kind of cost prohibitive to put up an e-commerce store now because, something like Shopify is expensive. Like, you're spending $50+ a month. And for someone who just wants to like sell 10 or 15 things, that's why you end up on something like Etsy. Because Stripe
yeah.
is doing a really good job of making this approachable, but you still have to write a lot of code. Shopify makes it done for you, but you got to spend $50 a month, which, if you're a small shop, that your hobby it might cost you money to have that hobby, depending on how hard you're marketing it, right? So
Yeah, yeah. I
this is
mean,
kind of
and
a
so this
cool,
is kind of like getting into the discussion is going more to some of the stuff I did with JAMstack CMS. Um, you know, like the idea of these end-to-end solutions and being able to deploy them like WordPress is to me like a a part of the future of kind of where software development is going. It's not like everything. You can't do everything in this way, but it solves a huge portion of these problems. And I think like with cloud based solutions and the ability to do stuff with infrastructure as code. I'm not sure exactly where Netlify is yet on this, or if that's kind of something that you all are like looking to get. But if you have a front end like this, and then you have a back end that is written, uh, the infrastructure is written in code that kind of like coincides with this,
hmm.
then you have the power to do something like WordPress, but you now get the all of the modern tooling that Gatsby and these other static site generators have, along with the scalability of the cloud and the low cost of the cloud. Because with serverless, of course, you're not paying for the typically for the resources, you're only paying for use. So what you're saying, Shopify is $50 a month, or these higher level platforms are even more than that per month. You can kind of like just deploy the full stack, and then you only start paying when you start getting customers and you get all these other benefits. So
Hmm.
like when you can combine, in my opinion, these solutions with infrastructure as code, deploying that full stack, that's kind of like where I'm, that's what really excites me. And if you see some of my talks, that's like all I talk about.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think you and I we're pretty kindred spirits here because like it seems like we're starting to explore how do you make static sites dynamic. And there's the approach that we're seeing at with like Next with kind of partially static, and then you server side render what you need. There's the idea that that a lot of like Gatsby sites are taking now, where you compile the static and then you just have like a client side only app that's running for the dynamic pieces. Um, I think there's some really big opportunities, and if I'm putting my like futurist cap on, I think that we're going to see some really exciting innovation in this space in the near future that like shows just a whole new way of thinking about this that hopefully helps us sidestep some of the pitfalls that we were running into with server side. Like server side rendering comes with its own set of catches and traps, and like using a server comes with its own set of traps and issues. And so I'm sure that whatever comes next will introduce its own set of problems, but hopefully it'll help us cover up and avoid some of the issues that currently end up serving as like pretty major foot guns for teams now.
Yeah, and you kind of mentioned the combination of like client and server rendering or dynamic and static rendering. Like I think e-commerce is an especially like good use or good discussion point for this because There's like you want the dynamic. Well, okay, you want the static generation for SEO for stuff like you want this chair to be visible, like for people looking for that type of chair, and it doesn't need to kind of like disappear. It needs to like be there, and people need to find it when they Google it. But when you click on that chair, and this isn't even implemented yet, but it's on the roadmap like in the next couple of weeks. Like what you probably want to do is list the number of items in inventory, right?
Mm-hmm.
But do you want to rebuild the entire site every time someone buys something?
Right.
Like probably not. So that's a great use case for dynamic fetching. So you might say in a real world scenario, when the page loads, you then kind of display a loading indicator or something and fetch to see if there's 10 items left or 3 items left. So that way when the user is like in the cart, you don't give them the opportunity to buy more than that's even there.
Yeah.
And that's just one use case.
Yeah, and that's actually, I think, a good example of kind of where this starts to, where the rubber meets the road, right? Because like we did that when we built up the Gatsby store. We do a full load of what's there, then we do an inventory check and we disable options that are sold out. And like the site will rebuild on inventory changes, but in that interim, we want to make sure we don't sell somebody something that's not available.
Yeah, and I think depending on the size of the site, but also in the future with the incremental builds.
Oh, thank you for the raid.
That is awesome. Like is the incremental builds is like it will be okay to rebuild, right? When someone buys something. But I think for now, it's kind of like if you have a massive site, that probably not the best idea to do. But if you have something small, I think like I don't know how many pages that Gatsby site is, probably a few dozen. It seems to be a good solution.
Yeah. I mean, I think there's always going to be that kind of gradient of like, oh, it makes sense to rebuild every time, and then as you get busier and busier, that becomes less and less feasible. And it also becomes more and more expensive because if you're rebuilding your site every couple of seconds, and why wouldn't you just have a server at that point? So you got to kind of find the right breakpoints to like decide when it makes sense. Man, this is going to be the first episode, I think, where we like. Usually, I'm like, oh no, let's just write code. But I'm like, I just want to keep talking about this. But we probably should write some code.
Yeah, let's look a little bit more at that Gatsby node ESM, and then maybe we'll then go write some code.
Okay, so quick recap. When we create pages,
so we would need to add code.
Yes, we would. Right? So we're pulling in the inventory from these inventory providers, and then once we have the inventory, we create a page that lists.
Should we write some code?
Yes, Bobby Tables, we will focus up. Okay, so after we get
Robert
the inventory,
Tables, I know him. Okay, cool.
Yeah, the chat here is amazing. We got everybody in here. I saw like Tony, Nikki Muleman, Bobby Tables, Benjamin Lannon, Eco's in the chat. Like it's a great crew out here. I think I saw Brownie Fed, Jason Brown is in there.
Oh yeah, no way, cool.
So yeah, it's good to see everybody. Thank you all for stopping by. I really appreciate it. Okay, so we load the inventory. We create a page for all of the items. Then we run this very clever algorithm that separates into individual categories with all of the items in that category as a the accumulator object, which ends up being
by
inventory.
Category, you could think of it.
Yeah. Then grab out each category.
An array of categories.
Loop over that array.
Yeah.
And for each,
basically create a page that would be like create one page for sofas, create one page for couches, so on and so forth.
Awesome. Yeah, this is great. So this is then we go over the inventory, and for each inventory item, we create an individual page. So that's what. So the first step up here for the all is what gives us this home page, and this home page has. All.
Actually, all will. It's not. We're not rendering all because I just created it because if someone needed it, it would be there. But I'm actually not.
Oh, I got you. I got you.
Yeah.
Okay. So we create it, but then nothing happens. Inventory by category. So we create each category, which is how we get sofas, living room, on sale, chairs. Then creating individual items. so that when we click on this, we can see the full item.
There we go. Yeah.
Okay.
And then you can actually see the component that we're using. So the component would be item view for item, and then it would be category view for category. Those are going to be in the templates. I know
Templates. Got it.
I need to kind of get my folder structure going a little bit more intuitive.
That's one thing that is hard about React is like they're all components, but they all do slightly different things.
I know I want to say like everything is a component because it is, but then if I put everything in components folder, I'm like this doesn't make sense actually. So let me find some other way to do it, and then it still doesn't make sense. But
yeah, yeah. I mean, it's it really feels like consistency is the only thing you can hope for, right?
yeah.
But so all right, so we've got this item view. The item view runs. Is there a query, or does that come from somewhere else?
So the data is going to be then given to it by the page context.
You're not using GraphQL for this, are you?
No, I'm passing everything directly into the page context.
We're sidestepping the whole thing. So here in the Gatsby node, here in this Gatsby node.
Sam. So if you go to the very bottom, you'll see where that's happening.
The content gets handed into the item.
I think that's in source nodes.
Okay, so here's source nodes. So you're creating a node. We get the inventory. Get the nav. Okay, so we're putting in nav info. And then category info gets created as a node.
And there we go.
Inventory info. Okay. But then we don't actually use this except I'm guessing we're going to see it in the nav. No, how are you getting it in here?
Are you saying the nav data? Like where is that coming from?
Here it is.
From the context. Yeah.
Got it. Okay. Yeah, so you're pulling in the query here, and then that builds up a context of what's in here, which we then use throughout the app. Okay, I get it. All right.
Yeah, I'm I don't know if like some of this is best practice or not, because I probably, just am in the moment and just like this works or this doesn't work. And I do reference a lot of blog posts and stuff from Gatsby people, but sometimes you're just like, once you get something working, you just go with it. So yeah, what do you think about this approach though?
So the benefit of using the GraphQL is that the item description is right here. So like if you were doing it as a GraphQL, it would be like export const query, and then you'd have the GraphQL, and it would be like, give me my product info or inventory info. And then you would kind of get like whatever thing you wanted and actually be able to see, title and description and price and all that. So there's a little bit of a kind of documentation in place thing because you know exactly what's in this.
Got it.
That's really the only trade-off though. Like in my opinion, there's not a mandate to do it one way or the other because it's at the end of the day, that GraphQL stuff when you build the site is going to get packaged up into a JSON file. So, it's not like you're being more efficient doing it one way or the other. The data is going to be passed along no matter how you do it.
Cool.
So I think it's really just a matter of like, which is the bigger mental hurdle, cross-referencing files to get the object structure or using GraphQL.
When I learned about page context, which is, I guess, one of the first things I started like learning when I was fucking around with the Gatsby node file, I was like, oh, this actually solves so many of my problems. It's so easy to use. I'm just gonna like use it, and I've been using it. I abused it. I abused it in JAMstack CMS, and I continue to abuse it here.
Yeah, no, you totally
even
can.
Though, like I'm a big GraphQL person.
We have a whole thing like on Gatsby without GraphQL.
Okay.
I don't know if this is still the doc that I wrote. At some point, I think I started this and it got turned into a different thing. But Oh yeah, yeah. And Amberly wrote this really cool thing that goes through all of it. But yeah, there's a ton of content on that. So I'll link to this in the chat in case you want to see what it's like to use Gatsby without GraphQL. So with that being said, let's play a little bit here. So if I want to make changes, is there a, let's see, it looks like we're using theme UI. Well, that's exciting.
So I'm actually right now using Tailwind.
Oh, okay.
And I don't have it themable just yet.
Got it.
Yeah, the way that I did JAMstack CMS is I have like this theme of admin panel where you can like theme it and it changes and saves in the database. When I ship this, like I did not have it themable yet, but yeah, that's something I'm going to be doing because right now you have basically, you know, black and I think this greenish color, which is kind of the two colors I'm using everywhere. But yeah, so Tailwind was pretty interesting. Have you ever used Tailwind?
Only enough to build out a couple demos, but I'm familiar with the approach, which feels very like CSS and JS-y. It's like a sneaky way to do CSS and JS.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's a good way to put it because, I mean, so like if anyone has never used Tailwind, it looks like some people like Phil's using it. Yeah, so that where we see like this class name is equal to PT2 PX0. Those aren't classes that I made. Those are just classes that Tailwind, makes available when you use it. And then we're basically using like their CSS file, and you kind of go by these different,
And so
standards that they've created.
The shorthand here is like this is padding top, and is this a pixel value or like a scale value?
It's a REM value.
Got it. And then you've got like a PX for the x-axis, so left and right, and then this is like a media query, so like medium screen resolution.
You got it.
That's so what I think is interesting about these is that they at first look really unintelligible. They kind of seem like a secret code, but as you start to realize what the shorthand is, it starts to get a little easier to just read these, and it gives you one of those benefits of CSS and JS, which is that the definition is right here. You're not seeing like class name, product title, and then you have to go to a CSS file and look at product title to figure out what the styles are that are applied. It's kind of like, okay, so I know that this is like 5x the regular size, and it's using a light weight. That's what my inference is. I don't actually know those. Is that true?
Yeah, that's kind of that what you said makes a lot of sense. And I see a few people kind of like commenting here. Chakra UI is basically like Tailwind for React. That's pretty cool. I haven't used that. And then someone mentioned that you don't end up creating all of these crazy components, names, and stuff like that. And that's true. I really enjoyed the fact that I wasn't creating a bunch of like components for styling extra stuff going on. And also my code was a lot more concise because I wasn't creating these style objects all over the place and using those either. So like you get out of you get even though it looks like a little extra code, it is within the component itself, but overall you're writing a lot less code.
Yeah, and I think if you were to imagine
coming out next week,
if you imagine what this looks like, if you write it out as a style object, it's probably a little gnarlier than this, and it would really
that's like 12 lines of code right there probably or something.
Yeah, so this component using like just plain style objects would probably be 150 lines of code to do the same thing, which and you can argue that maybe that would make it more legible. I don't know that I would agree with that though. I think it's a small concession for really I think a lot of like terseness in code that isn't necessarily it's not masking meaning or like it's not indirection or like codifying in a way that's confusing. It's like, all right, this is a common shorthand, like Phil said in the chat, like it gives you a set of conventions that are true on all sites across all developers, as opposed to each team building their own set of shorthand, which is what I found. Like when I was at IBM, we had little things like this, but it was like our team's special code. And if you knew it, it was great. And if you didn't, it was a pain to learn because, of course, we're a small team. We didn't document it. But yeah. So um, anyways, what are we saying?
You want to? So do you want to deploy this thing live, or is
Hell
that
yeah, I want to deploy this
too
thing
basic?
live. Okay,
Okay.
let's do it. All right. Should I? Let me just get reset. Get rid of all the junk that I made because we don't need it. That we don't need either. And so I'm going to change the name of it. So if I want to just change the name, does that just get picked up? Where does this get used?
Um, I don't know if that automatically gets used or if it. Honestly, I don't know about that.
That's fine.
I think
Let's
it might be
go.
in that SEO component, like which is used somewhere.
Site title comes out of where? Header. Look at the layout.
Oh, you know what? I'm not even using that header. I think I replaced it with something else.
Oh, okay, okay.
Yeah, so that's a good point. I probably need to. That's something I need to update for SEO purposes for sure.
That's fine. What is the L name? Whatever. It's fine. It's fine. Um, this is all good. Well, are
Oh
you
yeah, we haven't
using?
checked out the admin panel.
Yeah.
I guess we could take a look at that real quick before we deploy it. So this admin panel is kind of a pre-configured admin panel that you might use to modify inventory dynamically. So you can actually just click sign up and sign in, and you
Oh,
don't have to actually enter anything the way it's set up, like as is. And then and it'll basically like list out all the inventory that you currently have. You can edit that. Need to work on the responsiveness of that, but yeah. So
cool.
like all of the methods are attached to all of these buttons to like sign in, sign up, and confirm sign up and edit. All there's methods that are kind of attached to all these, but it's up to you to then go in and kind of like add the API specific code for whatever API you're working with. So if you're using something like Shopify, you might be using Shopify as the inventory provider. So this might not be useful. But
Mm-hmm.
if you have a backend that's just a database, then this admin panel would probably be really useful.
That's yeah. This is slick. Okay, cool. Yeah, this is very cool. All right, so let's
That's
see.
about it.
I'm gonna stop this, and we're going to commit it. And then let's create a new project. Set to push to. Okay, so now what is my get remote? Okay, so we're gonna get remote add me. Oh, I know what I should have forked it. We're whatever. So we'll just set git at github.com, J Langsdorf, JAMstack, Ecommerce.git. And I'm gonna push. Okay. So that's up. And now I'm gonna initialize it as a Netlify site. Um, what? Oh, it doesn't like git remote rename origin upstream. Did that work? Seeing if I remember how git works. Yes, and then I can. I spelled my own name wrong. Did y'all see that? Git
Oh, is that what that
remote
was?
rename J Lang Stort to origin.
Oh my gosh, that's funny.
I can't believe I did that. Okay, so let's Let's see what happened. I think what happened is it connected to the wrong repo because I had origin set. So I'm
Got it.
going
Got it. Yeah.
to see if I remember how I never used the UI. Site settings. Deploy your code straight from Git. Let's unlink. Let's this one. Oh boy. No, I've never had like this kind of an issue. It doesn't like, okay, but I want you to not be connected to a thing. Link a local repo or project folder. Okay. Deploy settings. Thank you, Phil. Aha! Okay, here we go. And it was JAMstack, Ecom. There it is. Do the master. We can use Gatsby build. That's all going to work. Good, good. Let's get this thing in here. And so now we can watch it build. And while we do that, I'm going to ask you, so what's next for you with this? Like, what are you excited about with kind of this whole JAMstack CMS idea? It seems like you're building out a suite of these, right?
So I think like the two major use cases are a CMS and an e-commerce system, and I've kind of like built very, very, in my opinion, like basic versions of those. And I think really what I want to do over the next year is polish these.
Really, right in the middle of Nader talking? Rude.
One of the things I actually like have as a new goal is to improve my Twitch channel to be even close to what Jason's is. But other than that, yeah, I kind of want to like just make both of these a lot more polished and better. I think both of these are proof of concept type of things more than anything.
Mm-hmm.
And I think like what I've learned over the past couple of years on my team is that like working consistently and focusing on improving one thing over time goes a long way. Like it's really like these small improvements kind of people notice and they start seeing polish. So I think what I want to do is focus on these two things and make them really good. And then like maybe do like a V1 launch for each of them and see what happens at that point.
Nice.
And you know, if people like it, then I might, you know, take it somewhere else. I don't know. But for now, it's kind of like, to me, like the WordPress, like the success of WordPress is fascinating. You know,
Mm-hmm.
it's a crazy story. I mean, the numbers that you hear about WordPress, the millions of sites and the large percentage of the internet that uses it, it's super cool. You know, and if you look what WordPress is, it's essentially a full stack solution that includes the front end, the back end, database, authentication. All these things are like packaged into this one code base that you just use. And I think that like we have a huge opportunity to kind of like do that, but with these modern tooling. And I think that's kind of where I think there's a huge opportunity in the future. And that's kind of what I'm going to focus on with these two projects.
Yeah. I mean, and this is like, it's super cool to see the focus on kind of incrementally improving these things, especially as you learn more about them. And I'm really excited to see the kind of agnosticism of it, because one trend that I've noticed is that there's a tendency to try to build everything in a way that's like, this works really well if you use exactly what I tell you to. And
right.
I think it's cool to think about this more as a, you know, the JAMstack is not it's not a company, it's not a set of tools, it's an approach to web development. So as we're building things out as JAMstack things, having this kind of agnostic approach, it's like, look, we're going to make this philosophy easier for you. You get all these benefits and you can use the set of tools that make the most sense for your team or your situation. and I think that's really cool. It's the kind of community spirit that I love. It's one of the things that I like about, the being in this community in general is that there's less dogmatism about exactly this tool or exactly that tool, and people are quick to kind of point it out, like, hey, you're being a little like pushy about this tool, like, what are you trying to do, not what are you trying to make me use.
Right. Yes. Yes. I love like, and I think that me and you think a lot around the idea of like developer advocacy and that
Mm-hmm.
whole. I know that in Netlify you all have like a developer experience focus or developer experience engineering. I think is that what you all call it there,
Mm-hmm.
something like that. But I think though at the end of the day, like you want to be working with people that are trying to help developers get the job done and provide them with ways to kind of make their life easier regardless of the tool that they're using. And it
Yes.
shouldn't be like a sales job. It should be more like a help. I want to help you job. And
Mm-hmm.
like a lot of companies won't hire people like that. So like, you sometimes see also people being pressured to kind of be that.
Yeah.
And you see like different parts of, I'm not going to like call anybody out, but you see different parts of the programming community. And some of them are like, go out of their way to almost do something I would say like like gatekeeping people into their way of doing things, as opposed to kind of saying, hey, this is the way we do things, but there's also like all these other ways. Go try everything and see what works best for you, because at the end of the
Mm-hmm.
day, like that's what we should care about, like
Yeah.
you having the best tool for the job and being happy.
And I think that's like, I love that so much because it feeds into a kind of a core philosophy of mine, which is that if I show you everything and you choose the solution that I work for, that means that you're in for life. Like you've
Yes.
weighed your options, you've decided that this is the best approach, and you want to go this way, and that means you're happy. If I like swindle you into using my thing by not exposing you to the other options, you might then be super pissed later on when you realize that you built your stack when it wasn't the best match. Like, I'm not trying to convince you
Speaking
to do
facts.
things that you shouldn't be doing. I want you to do the thing that's best for your project, because you succeeding is better for all of us. You having like a like full effort to do a thing that you shouldn't be doing on the wrong platform for your team and failing loudly and publicly makes all of us look bad, and it builds a lot of like ill will and just kind of you don't want that experience of somebody saying like, oh yeah, well so and so, like they twisted my arm and told me to use their tool and then I did it and it was just horrible. Like, that's not a story I ever want somebody to tell. I would
Yeah.
much rather that story was, oh yeah, well, Jason was talking to me about this approach and showed me the way that Netlify worked, and we decided that wasn't for us, so we went another way, and we're so much happier now. And like that to
Yeah.
me is
Yeah.
like, oh, we made an informed decision that was good for our company. That's how
Agree,
we
man.
win,
Agree
right?
totally. Cool. We should tag team on some type of like um, series of like maybe shows or podcasts or something on developer advocacy, because I think this is a super interesting topic. Maybe because this is like my day-to-day job, but I really like talking about stuff like this.
I think it'd be a fun like mini series if you want to. If you want to do it, I'm game.
All right, let's consider it for sure.
Yeah. All right. You heard it here first. All right, y'all. So Nader, what do you want to do? We've only got like 15 or so minutes left. Do you want to try to do anything else, or should we chalk this one up to being 90% podcast with a quick demo?
Yeah, I think we're good. I mean, we covered the basics. I think like digging through the code itself is just, there's a lot of code. So I would
Mhm.
encourage anyone that's looking at this, if you're interested, go in there and find things that I did wrong and make a pull request, but also go in there and play around with it. Like deploy it yourself. You know, maybe if you see things that could be improved and you don't want to submit a pull request, submit an issue, and I'll see if I can't add that stuff for you. And
Yeah.
I just appreciate anyone that has taken a look at it, for doing so.
Absolutely, yeah, and so I'm gonna put your Twitter in here. Where else should people find you on the internet?
Dev.to/Dabit3, Medium, Dabit3. Also, I guess, where else? Oh yeah, what is it? Goodreads. So Goodreads is Nader Dabit. Yeah, it's at Dabit3, I think, for Medium.
Got it. No,
Yeah, I don't
maybe.
really go on Medium actually these days. So yeah, Goodreads is like a social network for readers. I think that's about it. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
So
So
GitHub is also Dabit3. Yeah, GitHub definitely.
wow. Wow. What am
Everywhere
I?
is Dabit3.
I like the consistency. It makes life easier. I did the same thing where like everything is Jay Langsdorff to try to make it mostly so I remembered what they were.
Yeah.
um,
I mean, like I got Dabit3. It doesn't make a lot of sense. It's just my last name at number 3, but it works. So, but I wouldn't did want to be consistent, so I just kept it.
yeah. I'm into it. All right, Nader. As always, thank you so much for coming on the show. This has been super fun. I love the way that you approach this stuff. I love what you're doing with the JAMstack CMS. Super excited to see what you've got coming up next. And hey, for anybody who's watching, if you're planning on going to the React Summit, Nader and I are both going to be there. So come out, say hi. We're always down to get a coffee, get a beer, something like that. So don't be a
Who's the
stranger.
blue in the chat? I can't really see who's that. Is it someone that, because I see that they're very active and I just can't read their name.
That's Dom from React Adelphia.
Okay, cool. What's up,
Yeah.
dude? Okay, yeah, okay.
Yeah,
Awesome.
I
can
need
read
to
all
fix
other
the
names.
contrast on here.
What's up?
I need to fix the contrast on here because it's not ideal.
Oh yeah, just that one dark color I couldn't see, but everything else was good. Cool. Okay.
Awesome.
Yeah, it was great to be here. Yeah, so thank you for having me. I love hanging out and talking about this stuff, and I thank everyone that took time out of their day to tune in. Appreciate you for watching, and if you're watching this later on, also appreciate you watching it.
And for whatever reason, my internet has decided to draw to a crawl. So this is probably as good a time as any to start wrapping it up. Tomorrow, I have a special guest at a special time. I've got Mandy Michael calling in from Australia, which is why we're doing it at 4:30 p.m. Pacific, because otherwise it was going to be like 1 o'clock in the morning for her or something. So yeah, please check that out. Come in tomorrow. I've got a couple other ones that we're figuring it all out, but Render. We're gonna be at Render ATL, right?
Oh, Render ATL.
Yeah.
I can't wait.
Are you going
That's
to
gonna be dope.
Refactor Tech too?
I'm not going to be at Refactor Tech. I think Kurt was gonna be there from our team. So
nice.
But I'm super interested because Atlanta and the South in general. I'm from the South. You know, we don't really have a whole lot of crazy amount of tech events. So anytime there is one, so I'm super interested in Render and Refactor, and there's also a Magnolia JS. All these are coming up over the next few months. So
yeah,
pretty pumped about these.
Lots of good stuff coming up. These are all events that I will be at. It looks like Nader and I will both be at Render and React Summit. And with that, I'm going to stop talking. Go check the schedule. It's if you want to get notified on your calendar when these are going to go live, you can add, I just put it in the chat, a link that will just add it to your Google Calendar so you can see when the episodes are going to happen. Chat, stay tuned. We're going to raid. Nader, thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate it. And we will see you next time.
Later.
Well timed, Nikki. All right, goodbye, everybody.